Let's get to the story of the day. In Philadelphia, I was raised in an Orthodox Jewish family. Materialism and judgment were prevalent in the culture. I spent my adolescence as an atheist, being bookish, quiet, and serious. Since learning about the Holocaust when I was 8 years old, I've been enraged by God. How could God exist and allow such a tragedy to happen? A quick, fatal heart attack took my father's life suddenly when I was 17, soon after graduating high school. I adored him and felt abandoned. To make matters worse, I found out during the grieving time that the prayers of the 3 survivors, my mother, sister, and I, did not count since we were women. Furious, I sought solace in Eastern mysticism. My relationship with my mother had never been good, and it had worsened to the point where I had to leave home. I moved to California in the summer of 1970, searching for excitement, a new life, and inner peace. All of this came to me in a dramatic and unexpected way while living in Venice Beach outside of Los Angeles in July 1970, when I was involved in a motorcycle accident that resulted in my near-death experience. My first motorbike ride was part of a celebration of our arrival. A boy I met took me to see Hair, a play about the hippie counterculture and the age of Aquarius, in which mystic crystal revelation and the mind's real liberty will magically convert our society into one of peace and understanding. We were riding back on a tiny roadway without helmets when we were hit by a drunken driver. I was flung to the ground head first, sustaining a shattered skull and multiple broken bones in my head. When the cops arrived, they began to accuse the driver of the automobile with manslaughter, since my skull was so horribly injured that they assumed I was dead. This was not the situation at the time. I remained in the hospital for 2 weeks while my fracture was sutured. I was given enough pain medicine to get by. When I was freed, they simply advised me to take aspirin. I didn't dispute them since I was too young and ignorant to grasp what was happening to me. However, when I arrived in my temporary flat, I was so depressed that I resolved that the first night would be my last. My pain threshold was extremely low, and the contusions that had ripped off half of my face's skin had ruined my self-image. I had no family and had nothing to live for. The agony had become excruciating, and no man would ever love the disgusting creature I had transformed into. I lay down on the bed and prayed from the bottom of my heart for God to take me, as many atheists do in times of distress. I experienced an unexpected sense of calm. I found myself floating above the bed on the ceiling, staring down at my comatose body. I had barely come to terms with the magnificent oddity of the situation, that I was me but not in my body, when I was joined by a brilliant entity enveloped in a shimmering white glow. This entity, like myself, flew but lacked wings. When I turned to face him, I felt profound awe. This was no ordinary angel or spirit, but he had been sent to deliver me. I felt like I was in the presence of the Messiah because he was so full of compassion and generosity. Whoever he was, his presence strengthened my peace and brought me joy as I recognized my buddy. He grasped my hand gently, and we soared right through the window. My ability to do this came as no surprise to me. Everything was perfect in this lovely presence. Underneath us lay the stunning Pacific Ocean, over which I had eagerly watched the sun rise and set during my brief stay. A greater magnificence, though, pulled my gaze higher, where a big entrance led to a circular route. Despite the fact that it appeared to be deep and far to the end, a white light flashed through and spilled out into the darkness to the other side, where the aperture beckoned. It was the most bright light I'd ever seen, though I didn't know how much of it was hidden from view. The path was slanted upward and to the right. This led towards the opening of the narrow, dark hallway, still hand in hand with the angel. I then recall ascending a considerable distance toward the light. I suppose I was going very quickly and through an immeasurable expanse, but this entire domain appeared to exist outside of time and space. Finally, I arrived at my goal. It wasn't until I came out the other end that I realized I wasn't joined by the being that had taken me there, but I wasn't by myself. The living presence of the light was there in front of me. I sensed an all-encompassing intelligence, wisdom, compassion, love, and truth inside it. This flawless being lacked both shape and sex. It, which I will refer to as a he in the future, in accordance with our usually recognizable terminology, contained everything, just as white light contains all the hues of a rainbow when it passes through a prism. And then I got a beautiful realization. I was looking at God. I immediately lashed out at him with all of my unanswered questions and all of the injustices I'd witnessed in the physical world. I'm not sure if I did it on purpose, but I discovered that God instantly knows all of your thoughts and answers telepathically. My mind was naked, and I had become pure of mind. The ethereal form in which I had traveled through the tunnel seemed to have vanished. It was only my particular intelligence confronting that universal mind, which clothed itself in a brilliant, living light that was more felt than seen, because no eye could absorb such radiance. I don't remember the specifics of our conversation. The ideas that came so clearly and fully in heaven were not taken back with me to earth. I'm sure I posed the inquiry concerning my people's misfortunes that had plagued me since I was young. I was extremely concerned by first-hand tales about the horrors of the Vietnam War that I heard at my job in Philadelphia from shell-shocked boys my age. I recall one thing. There was a reason for everything that happened, no matter how bad it appeared in the physical sphere. And as I received the answer, my own awakening mind answered in the same way. Of course, I would think. I already know that. How could I have forgotten? Indeed, it appears that everything happens for a reason, and our eternal self already knows what the reason is. I ultimately stopped asking questions because I was suddenly flooded with all of the being's wisdom. I was given more than simply answers to my queries. All knowledge was shown to me at once, like the instant flowering of an unlimited number of flowers. I was filled with God's wisdom and suddenly understood how the cosmos worked. It was so basic and lovely over there. The feeling I carried back was one of interconnection of all things and the unfolding of the unconditional love I had initially rejected upon meeting this ineffable basis of life. What I'll never forget is the feeling of being at home, of being at the center of the circle of infinity, of the realization of all our unsaid wishes. Yes, I was very much alive there. The disparity is so stark that I can't even draw a mathematical comparison. An imperfect example would be to compare the life essence of our bodies on Earth to the flicker of a single candle, and the life coursing through the separated soul or spirit to the blazing forth of a sun. But my voyage of discovery was only getting started. For the time being, I've been taken to an unbelievable journey through the universe. We traveled to the center of starbirth, supernova explosions, star death, and sights from the outside of galaxies magnificently whirling across radiant space, including our own Milky Way. This experience left me with the idea that the universe was all one great object fashioned from the same fabric. Space and time are illusions that confine us to this plane. Out there, everything is present at the same moment. I was a passenger on a magnificent spaceship where the Creator revealed the fullness and beauty of all of His creation to me. There was no darkness there, nor were there any between the things. Every object was illuminated and alive, aware and loving. The last thing I saw before losing all exterior vision was a dazzling fire, the core and center of a magnificent star. Perhaps this was a foreshadowing of the blessing that was about to come my way. Everything faded, save for a beautifully filled nothingness where that and I encompassed everything. Here, in sublime magnificence, I experienced communication with the light being. I was now filled not only with all knowledge, but also with all love. It seemed as though light was being poured into and through me. I was God's object of worship, and His or our love gave me life and joy beyond my wildest expectations. My being was altered. My delusions, crimes, and shame were forgiven and purged without my having to ask, and I was now love, primordial being, and bliss. And, in some ways, I'll be there indefinitely. A union like this cannot be shattered. It was, is, and always will be. I returned to my broken body unexpectedly, not knowing how or why, but miraculously, I was able to restore the love and joy. I was in a state of euphoria beyond my wildest expectations. The pain has all been lifted from my body. I was still fascinated by an unending joy. I continued in this mindset for the following 2 months, indifferent to any pain. I felt as if I had been reborn. Everything was alive and full of energy and intellect, and I saw amazing meanings everywhere. Every object, natural or man-made, was filled with light and love. Although this exquisite gift faded with time, I now realize that it is all that exists. We are love at our core, and we are all loved and forgiven in every moment. My behavior following the event demonstrated this shift. I used to be painfully bashful and felt undeserving of being loved. I went out with my head bandaged and obtained a job in 1 week, made a lot of friends, and had my first true romance. Following the Silamar earthquake in 1971, I relocated back east and returned to my mother, with whom I reunited. I began college at the age of 23 and graduated with Phi Beta Kappa. Since then, I've married and become a mother, both of which I consider to be part of my purpose. I finally broke the seal on the sudden enigma when I discovered the International Association for Near-Death Studies, or IANDS, in 1989, and resolved to share the gift whenever I had the chance. I've gotten more spiritual, as have many others. Those of us drawn to the spiritual path have learned that the door has already been opened and the mythical new cycle has begun. We are all facets of our creators and each other's sparkling diamond hearts. What a beautiful time to be alive, to be able to speak the truth and connect with the forgotten wisdom in the souls of others. Despite the fact that it has been 36 years since my heavenly journey, I've never forgotten it. I've never questioned its veracity in the face of mockery and disbelief. Nothing so vivid and life-altering could have been a dream or a hallucination. On the contrary, I consider the rest of my life as a transitory fancy, a brief dream that will end when I awaken in the constant presence of the giver of life and happiness. I assure anyone who mourns or fears annihilation and death that there is no such thing as death, and that love never ends. According to modern physics, matter does not die, but rather transforms into energy. I consider the body as a garment that contains the immortal consciousness. When our job is over, we shed our coat and assume our beautiful form, filled with the whole spiritual wisdom we so desperately desired during our worldly days. After graduating from this brief school, we receive our life review report card with bonus credit for love, forgiveness, and service to others. We can now continue our trip unhindered, unfettered, and fully living. Someday, you and I shall be united in this paradise of love, light, and never-ending happiness.